Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going? So, I just want to go ahead and give you kind of a brief overview of what I've got coming up for the next week. And again, I just want to kind of, I don't know, just give you kind of some stuff that I've been thinking about for the past, couple of days. And, of course, I bring this stuff up, right, because, in the past week, we've had a lot of stuff go on. I mean, again, you guys have heard and seen that video that I had from last week. I want to give you guys some, some tips and pointers on how I kind of did that. And yeah, well, let's get right into it. So, as you guys can tell, you've got the drop rates. I just recently got the Stroke of Fortune, which is the Gemming Gremlin's ability to give you gems every day. So, again, reaching him to 50 and getting Trickstar to 50 have both been very, very lucrative. Again, I got his ability to level 7 almost right away, but one of the reasons why I recommend getting those two is that they're both economically benefiting you every 2 days, pretty much. I mean, heck, even the Gremlin is actually a little bit faster than the Trickstar is in terms of the return rate. Because when they're not upgraded, it's actually much, 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 much slower. But again, I recommend just kind of taking your fragments. Don't go too crazy with this, because honestly, I think doing 12 a day is plenty. Because you get, just a tiny portion into your fragments. Because what you're basically doing is you don't want to get too crazy with it. So, in case you're wondering, what was my strategy initially when it came to the familiars? All right. Well, for those of you who are just starting out and you're just trying to get the familiar started out, I almost recommend that what you do is you need to, before you even get into it, make sure that what you do is right from the start. Get access to Bonehead and get access to where is he? I think it's Sorcerer. Yeah. So you want to get access to those two particular familiars right from the start, because one of the few benefits of getting them is Coliseum entries, which means getting to the Coliseum a little lower every day, and then obviously Sorcerer, which gives you an instant transmutation. Now, that is really, really useful for those of us who are just starting out, I'm sure. And again, I would say that once you've gotten those, though, I would almost completely skip Pack 2 altogether. And the reason why I say this is because, in some sense, once you get through Pack 2, you really ought to be going straight for Pack 3 monsters. Because monsters like, Totemist and among others, those are pretty interesting in themselves. I mean, granted, there are some Pack 2 monsters that are definitely worth investing into, but once you get into Pack 3, the whole economic boom is going to set in almost right away. And what I did is I actually set up 3 spires, and then I had the rest all basically springs. And when I had those all upgraded, I was sitting there bringing in about 25 to 30 or so packs at a time. And what I did is I went out and I went out and got my resources, and I basically printed a bunch of packs using gems. And now, of course, when I did this, all right, you want to kind of do this when we have an event like this where, the actual cost for the resources for those packs is reduced. And so what I did is I kind of timed them in conjunction with hell events whenever it was possible. And basically I just kind of doubled up all of my loots that way. And so by doing that, you basically give yourself a really good chunk of packs. And so when you've done that, what I did is I just kept doing it until I had 120 packs for each Pack 3 monster. And then once I've done that, I just went ahead, destroyed all of my buildings, and went all gems. And so the idea behind this is basically get these all up to 60 now. So the idea will be to get this to 60, that to 60, yada, yada, yada. But basically, by maxing their abilities, at that point, all you need is fragments as to upgrade the little miniature, abilities. And that works great because ultimately you're basically getting through both problems as fast as you possibly can. It works pretty well, in my opinion. But one of the drawbacks of doing this, though, is you might notice that I don't have any other heroes. The reason why I'm doing all of my heroes into one particular familiar at a time is that I'm doing about 4 to 5 levels every couple days, which is pretty powerful. Now, on a base, 118% is pretty high. Now, it helps that you go into your research tree and you want to kind of just invest in that familiar tree as probably as frequently as you can once you get to this point, because for the most part, once you've gotten it and you've gotten these, all of these abilities up, I mean, it really does kind of benefit you in the long term, I think. And so, of course, obviously I have been going through the defense tree. I just, recently I just maxed out the defense tree. So that's completely done. And now I'm just going through the upgrade defense tree. And you can tell I'm just kind of going through these and I'm just maxing them out. So eventually I'll have some videos showing you guys what I can do with the wall defense. Because again, I'm perfectly aware of the strategy here. And I do see a room for it that in the near future will be pretty interesting. Of course, don't ever neglect the fact, though, that you want to max your monster hunting tree before you do any of this. And you want to max your military tree before you do any of this. Now, interestingly enough, yes, I have gone through the military command tree almost all the way. There are some abilities, and they're very tiny in my opinion. For a couple of percentage points, they're not necessarily all that great unless you're just maximizing your, like a lot of people, they'll probably argue with me and say, well, why don't you just get champ gear? Why don't, and the reason being is I have no interest in spending that kind of money for for a set of gear when this is perfectly going to do exactly what I want it to do. There's not really, in some sense, I almost want to say the only reason I will ever need champ gear is if I'm going to be hitting forts. But seeing as how a lot of the time, whenever I do hit forts, I'm not having to deal with anybody with gold champ and all that. I'm not too worried about it. But essentially, what we're going to do though is that we're going to maximize the upgrade defenses tree, and essentially, I will show you guys some more about this stuff down the road. But when you've gotten to a point where, you've got your familiars mostly done, you've got most of this stuff kind of done like I do, you can kind of go down this route. And me personally, I'm going to do it for fun. For me, I'm just upgrading the defense tree just so that I can see kind of what happens when somebody tries to hit your wall with, 375,000 tier 4, and then they bounce, because up to this point, they hit my wall and they still fail because, unfortunately, as you can tell, I kind of have, I have a bit of a buffer built up. And now you've seen what has happened in previous videos. And again, look, I don't have a whole lot of tier 4. And the part of the reason it works so well is because basically by having that buffer of about 200,000, all I got to do is put on this war gear, and I'm putting about 400% into whichever stat I want. And the real trick to this, right, is that what you have to think is that if like somebody sends cavalry in range at you, no matter how many times they send it at you, okay, they're gonna get countered by the range, and then they fail every single time. And the range that they add onto it is not going to make much of a difference, so it will bounce almost every single time, regardless if it's a 375,000 stack or not. And they've got max chat and all that. It does not matter. The only reason why this will ever fail is if they send 375,000 heroic fighters, or basically infantry. That is the main counter that I have to be wary of. So whenever I see an infantry march, what I end up doing a lot of the time is, and again, you'll notice, what do I have predominantly on my wall? It's mostly range. Now, of course, some of you guys have asked in previous videos, how come do I not use Snow Queen? Now, obviously, I would use Snow Queen if I had her upgraded, but for the purposes of what we're doing right now, it's not such a big need. But what you'll notice is that basically by taking, you'll notice here that what you see is she adds trap defense, and then she's adding ranged attack. Now, that's nice and all, but for what I want out of it, it's not necessarily going to do me a whole lot of good to get a lot of trap defense. So I instead choose to create the trap attack and the max HP. And that's a personal preference. But of course, by having Songstress, which again is a pay-to-play hero, okay, that's adding another 25% to HP, defense, and attack, which is really good. And then combining that with another 2 army attack heroes, both being Rose Knight and Bombing Goblin, it works great. But basically, what you want to do is you want to pick about 4 into whatever unit type you're using to counter with. And so in this case, I've got myself 4 ranged heroes, which is giving 250% squad attack. And then I've got that one little cav hero in the back. And the reason why I choose a cav hero versus, say, an infantry hero is because, generally speaking, if somebody breaks through the wall, what are they probably going to be breaking the wall down with? Infantry. So I have a cav hero in there just in case which may just help just a tiny bit in those kind of situations. It won't be enough to really make or break it, because odds are if they do send a 375k second, I'm probably going to be in a bad spot if I'm enraged. But ultimately, the idea is, though, is if somebody in infantry is coming at me, then what I do, and again, this is why I'm setting up another 250k stack buffer here, is that all I have to do at that point, right, is you go over to your talents. You go, and in my case, I have, one set of talents. And again, what I'll probably end up doing pretty soon is I will research probably 2 more into the innate talent, so that what I can do is I'll have a pure imp, a pure range, and a pure cav. And the idea would be that, if somebody comes at you with, say, range and cav, okay, great. Then I go full range, click on the talents, and then you go over very quickly, you switch your gear over to all range. And again, that requires a range set and having a quick swap for it. And then you would go down here and you would change your station heroes as quick as you could, so that you'd have range heroes and then one of whatever hero you want, but preferably an army attack hero if possible. And that basically maximizes the most amount of damage you can do into that one counter, which is what made that previous video I made for you guys work so well. Is because the guy kept sending cap range, and every time he said cap range, he's just like, why is this not working? I'm sending 375,000 tier 4, and it's failing every single time. It's because I've basically figured out the pure counter to whatever he has, and I'm maximizing as much damage as I can do to that one particular unit type. And of course, all he would have had to do is just switch over to infantry, and that would have completely negated what I had done. But this is why I've built an infantry stack. So the idea behind this is that, so if somebody sends infantry at me, okay, what I can do is I've got the imp stack in there so that I can kind of negate it in some sense. So by going into infantry phalanx, for example, then it's his infantry versus mine. And then all that I have to make sure is that my cavalry will bounce it. So in some sense, if he sends infantry cav, I might be in some trouble. If he sends pure infantry, I might be in trouble. But the hope is that if I can just maximize enough of the actual cav attack, the imp will buffer and the cav will do the damage. And that will hopefully keep me from getting hurt. Now, it's possible, because ultimately the best counter that I could use in those kind of situations is the cav phalanx, and to maximize my buffer. But until I can get that buffer made, it won't do me much good. But what this is used for predominantly from here on out now is if somebody sends range, I just switch over to imp phalanx. And then they're completely, utterly screwed, because then the infantry will basically take the buffer for that. And so what I'm going to do is that eventually what I'll have planned out here is that we'll get up to about 250 to 275 or so in that department, and then add double to those 2 unit sets, bringing me up to 140k on a base. And then I'll add another 30,000 over into the tier 3s. And the hope here is that when they attack, it'll balance, if anything. Now, of course, that's purely for solo attacks. It won't do me much good in a rally. And again, you guys have asked me, how come, if you're getting rallied, man, if to send 1 million troops at you, what are you going to do? Again, it goes back to the fact that, if you know what the guy is sending at you, and let's say, I don't know, let's pick some guy out on the game. A lot of the time, if you know your gear, okay, you can kind of look at a person, you can say right away, just by looking at him, you can say, what is he in? Based on what he's wearing is obviously not more gear. He's not wearing anything that would really concern me any, but if he was, he would probably be using, something of some value. Obviously, he's not a very good example, so let's see if I can find somebody that maybe a little bit better. Okay, so like this guy in particular, okay, just looking at him without knowing what he's going to send me, I can tell you just looking at him, he's using a range infantry base for his gear, and that means he is most likely going to attack me with infantry and range. So what runs through my mind? Again, if they're smart, okay, they'll probably switch this gear and completely trip me up. But 9 times out of 10, they don't. And so, essentially, by putting infantry and range gear on there, all I have to do essentially is ask for cavalry reinforcements. And so, of course, you might wonder, well, if he's sending range at you, isn't the cavalry going to get hit all to hell? You're right, they will. But the real danger is, if that's the case, then why not go all infantry? Well, the only reason why I would be a little bit standoffish with this is if he sends all infantry, then it's my infantry versus his, and that's okay for the most part. But again, it kind of depends on what stat you maximize, and based on that particular codex he's got in there, that's a little bit of cav range. So I mean, again, I would say there's a lot of room to get the assumption that he would use range, and you're probably safe to go with all infantry in a situation like that. And so, for the most part, I mean, if I was to ask for reinforcements, okay, a lot of the time everybody kind of wonders, well, what kind of reinforcements do you really usually need? In my opinion, you really ought to be asking for tier 3 reinforcements because they're really cheap for your guild to pay out, and about 1 million tier 3 is usually not too difficult to handle. Obviously, you can get tier 4 reinforcements if you want, but generally that just ends up costing people in the end. But you could very possibly, if you wanted, you could put 1 million tier 4 infantry in there. I guarantee you, if they send a rally, hoping that that they don't send 2 million tier 4 at you, it will most likely bounce. Because if they've only got tier 3s and some tier 4s, like maybe 400,000 to 500,000, it will most likely bounce. Especially if you're in war gear. But again, there is kind of a mindset for this stuff. So, again, looking at my gear right away, you're probably going to think, what exactly is he got going here? I've got some mixed setups kind of going on here. And again, part of the reason why I do is because it's made to trip you up a little bit. Obviously you can just look at that and you can say, okay, he's probably going ranged, but there's infantry associated to these vials. So you're kind of wondering, ooh, there's a little bit of infantry in there. Then there's infantry, cav infantry, but all I have to do is, if I don't want to use that, I could go to this and now I'm cav infantry. If I go to this, I'm cavalry. Yeah, and that's the beauty of being able to switch a gear out like that. Just with just 1 or 2 pieces, you can very quickly shift the entire gear set over, so that if I want to be predominantly cavalry, predominantly infantry, or whatever, I can do that without really a whole lot of effort. And that's what I've been doing, until I can get a couple more quick swaps. But again, with all of this stuff and just all this discussion, and again, I would say that if you guys have any suggestions on what exactly you'd like me to see or do next, feel free to say so in the comment section below. But for the most part, right? You might notice that I am no longer in Madlands again, and that's because I finally got ousted for the second time after that video. My guild leader, and technically it's a little bit like let's just say it. There's some certain circumstances that basically got me kicked out of the guild again, but yeah, I'm basically we're going to be hanging out in Wolfpack for a little while, and we'll probably just see what happens. Again, it's been a busy week for me, guys, so we'll probably more than likely have some more videos out for you guys here on the weekend. But again, I hope you guys understand, because again, like I said, college is coming up to wraps, and so everybody's trying to push as much stuff as they can. And so hopefully I will be uploading a lot more. Here comes, coming the summer, it will be a lot more time will be available to kind of play around with some of the stuff, and we can really kind of experiment some more. And again, you guys have probably heard, we've got KVK coming up. So I'm getting prepared for that and getting everything set up. And again, if you guys want to know, some of the stuff that I'm doing to prepare, feel free to ask in the comment section below. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, keep in mind too with this particular event, right? Again, looking at here, if you save your guild quests, you can get 4 times up to guild coins. So you definitely want to be in a guild for that. You can do dark essences and you can get gems out of it. You don't want to forget any of that. I mean, heck, we even got a gift of appreciations, 1 per day, and we're going to get Brave Arts, speed ups, and a bunch of other stuff, which is nice. And then, of course, the Phantom Knights. Now, interestingly enough, there are going to be 10 of these. Now, I don't know about you guys, but me personally, I've gotten the impression that may, in fact, mean that they have lower health. I don't know, but 10 of them seems a little excessive, and I'm a bit curious what they're doing differently with this event. So we're going to have to wait and see. But for the most part, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time.